So, hello everybody and good evening. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Great.
Yes, we can.
I would love to welcome you to this webinar that is organized annually by Phenomenal Women Global. We are so happy to be hosting this seminar, this webinar, and having a number of women in our group who will be speaking. Before I go on and introduce them and introduce the whole concept, I would just like to say Happy Women's Day to everybody. We are so blessed to be in this room. We are so blessed to have made it to the 8th of March and to celebrate this day. That where the theme is the global theme, as you know, is accelerate. I mean, what's the global theme? Accelerating progress, I think. So our theme is women funding the future, and this is an important theme for us because it's a one way that we look and see the role of women in accelerating progress, the role of women in financing, the role of women in the future of education, but also women and their visibility in global platforms. This all contributes to having a fruitful and solid future for women. So right now, before we go into questions and introduction, I just would like to make a very brief presentation on what we do at Phenomenal Women Global, so that some of you who are not familiar with our work will know how to engage with us after that. So we basically our main mission is to advance, connect, and empower women. And we do so basically by building professional skills and personal growth of women. We also create safe spaces to discuss strategies from women advancing in leadership, career, business, and the potentials that they face. So, for example, that picture you see there is one of our summer capacity building programs where women were learning about public speaking and leadership. So we really also work towards eliminating discrimination against women and gender-based violence, really looking at SDG 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment. We have a holistic approach to women's empowerment. So we don't only look at building professional skills, but we also look at the woman as a whole, looking at her mental health, aspects of mental health. So a lot of our programs embody a holistic and multifaceted way of womanhood. And we are an organization that's interdisciplinary, so we welcome all groups of women from all professions, entrepreneurs, different leaders, and professionals in different fields. So we are currently based in Switzerland and Uganda, but we have focal points around the world. The photos you see there are our global conferences that we organize. The one on the left was in Geneva. The one on the right was held in Boston. And most of our activities, like I said, revolve around building leaders. So when we look at leadership and entrepreneurship, we have an annual leadership conference every year in Geneva and in Uganda. But we also do specific networking events for women entrepreneurs. For example, last year we did some in Uganda, we did some in Zambia and Zimbabwe, bringing together entrepreneurs, sharing knowledge, but building our skills as well. So we do have periodic speaker series and networking events for professionals and entrepreneurs. Sometimes we do have a market space as well. And these are some of the activities we do. And when I talked about looking at women in a holistic fashion, we have these wellness retreats where we do go and look at issues such as stress management for leaders, looking at work-life balance for leaders. And, we have a few programs coming up. We have a diversity, equality, and inclusion program. This is particularly based in Switzerland, where we look at aspects that affect women's growth, such as racism, the gender pay gap, and how they integrate, how minorities integrate in the workforce. We have done a documentary before looking at issues of discrimination and racism against women, especially women of African descent. And we have done a number of things in Switzerland. We were nominated by Swiss Diversity. We were one of the nominees for our work in diversity in Switzerland. So on the other hand, we also support an education fund because we believe that, especially in the African continent, a lot of girls who drop out of school don't have lose the privilege of, for example, going to university and eventually becoming a leader or having that higher education. So we have a fund, and some of the proceeds that we get from our membership goes to funding girls' education. We do community outreach in different spaces in Africa, and particularly in Uganda, and we do work with partners quite a lot. So these are some of the pictures of our conferences we've had, Geneva and Uganda. One of the areas that we are talking about today is international and global visibility of women, especially minorities, women of color. So we create those spaces. Like recently, we had a conference in Zurich to make Davos and the World Economic Forum accessible for women in our network. Some of you were there. But again, we also have all these spaces that we try and promote the visibility of women, whether it is in Geneva or New York or within the Africa region. One of those photos you see is a market space that we offer for women during our conferences, whether it's in Geneva, Uganda, Zambia, or anywhere else in the world. Each conference and each event we have sometimes has a market space to give women who are into business that space to promote themselves. So this is one of our business networking events in Uganda for women entrepreneurs and professionals. And this photo was a meeting we had in Zambia with City Women. Those were bankers in Zambia, sharing our vision, sharing our leadership trajectory, and also talking to them, learning from them about women and financing. And we do community outreach as well. So we give back to the community. And there you can see one of our outreaches in Uganda, where we support women in the rural areas. That was a fishing community, have economic and financial skills in order to support their families and eventually their girls' education. So finally, this is the list of calendars the list of events that we have for the year, and it will be shared with you by email. But just taking note of some of the notable events are the Women's Day High Tea in Geneva, which will be an event for celebration, but also motivational speeches. We have the Anti-Racism Week, which is funded by the Canton de Genève, where we will have panel discussions on racism, commemorating the International Day Against Racism. There will be a networking event in Uganda, but the date is yet to be decided. And we do have our leadership course and global mentorship program, which more information will be shared with you about. And this is a global program where different women, it's online, can mentor each other, but also benefit from master classes that help build leadership skills. So that I won't go through the whole calendar, but the defined dates are there. We also have our Wellness and Visionary Retreat, which happens in the south of France in mid-June. And so we just ask you to come on board, really subscribe to our website, and so that you can be able to be involved in the various activities. So how can you get involved is becoming a member. The membership, once you become a member, you also have access to the mentorship program and other discounts to other events. You can also donate and sponsor. One thing I neglected to mention was that within the leadership programs, we have fellows that we take to come to our office in Geneva or Uganda, These are usually younger people or people who want to get a feel of what it is like to work in a women-led organization supporting women's rights. We did have a bit of funding from the Swiss government for that last year, and we're still trying to pursue that. But we also welcome companies to send people from their teams and fund them to get that work experience. And what this does, it also gives the person who is a fellow, if you're in Geneva, to have that exposure to the international community and organizations, and if you are in Uganda, to have access to working with local communities. So it's a way of building leadership and also a way of people building work experience, especially young people or people who want to have an extra layer of experience. So you can also become a mentor and a mentee, attend our events, and stay connected with us. So the membership fees are indicated there. It's 30 for people resident in Africa, just $30, and those outside Africa, $100. And, there are lots of opportunities, but you'll receive all this information. But the main thing is, of course, having access to different programs, having access to the market spaces and the different activities we do at a reduced rate or at an exclusively member prioritized rate. And those are our social media channels. So if you have any questions, please just drop them into the group chat. We are now going to proceed with our program. And I'm very happy that a lot of people have joined, and there are already some connections being made in the group. So I would like to just start by introducing our esteemed speakers. And Diana, please signal to me if you would like to start, or I should start.
Please start. Go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to introduce Ambrielle. Ambrielle, please wave. So Ambrielle is the founder of Fusion Fashion Tech, and she's a CEO and founder of A More Humane World. She believes in the power of aligned communities and the true transformation that happens at the intersection of creativity, sustainability, and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Ambrielle is also a social innovation visionary with over a decade of experience and expertise at the nexus of technology, fashion, culture, and entertainment. She is the founder of Fusion Fashion Tech. It's a nonprofit and a UN Fashion and Lifestyle Network member. So she has so many accolades. She's been to Yale, I can see on her CV. She's done a lot of work with UN bodies, with Harvard, and she's also organized several events in Davos. So would like to welcome her and really recognize her achievements. Thank you for coming. Next, I would like to introduce Lydia. Lydia, please wave. Lydia's career started nearly 2 decades serving as a diplomat, including at the UN Secretariat, the World Bank, the WHO. She has been a senior advisor also at Macro Advisory Partners. She has done lots of work in relation to she co-founded the Oxford Transitional Justice Research to facilitate interdisciplinary collaboration. She is from Kenya originally, but and she's also a US national. One of the things that is interesting to us as well for this discussion about her is her work on education, which she will talk about today. But she draws on her expertise in international politics and development to build innovative solutions at the intersection of finance, global higher education access, and the future of work. She's also a graduate, postdoc, a doctorate from Oxford University. So I'd like to welcome her and really recognize you and thank you for being on this call. Next, I would like to introduce Elena. She is, can you wave? CEO of Rahim Investment. Her leadership embodies her motto, sustainability, sculptor in deep tech investments, reflecting her dedication to reshaping the future of impactful investments. With over 25 years of strategic investment expertise, she empowers GCC family offices and European corporations to be a sniper in investment by focusing on transformative technologies such as biotech, medtech, energy transitions, and ESG constructions. So we'd like to welcome you and recognize you and celebrate you as well on Women's Day. And then I would like to welcome Anila. Anila, please wave. She is a creative consultant and co-founder. She lives in Geneva. Anila has flourished both as an educator and a fashion styling consultant, carving her niche in European fashion scene. Her influence capitulated Chanaz into an international brand, with Anila serving as its esteemed global ambassador. She orchestrates the unveiling of Chanaz couture collection at prestigious events in Switzerland, London, UAE, Pakistan, and Australia. And she also brought some of her Chanaz products to our last conference, Phenomenal Women Conference in Geneva. She was one of the exhibitors. So we are very, very happy to have you, Anila, and welcome. We celebrate you. We honor you as well on this Women's Day tomorrow.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce Valerie. Valerie, can you wave? Okay, there you are. Valerie is a Pan-African economist with over a decade of experience in multinational and Pan-African organizations. She has made significant strides in the finance sector, working with esteemed institutions such as Santander Bank, which is Absa Bank right now. And her career trajectory also includes roles with Japanese Fujitsu, Siemens, and various other companies. Valerie is a prominent entrepreneur who positions the private sector and, most importantly, female entrepreneurs as catalysts for the social and economic development. She founded Braza Transactions, a firm specializing in foreign exchange. And in 2021, she founded Invicti, an international impact club that increases visibility and creates innovative opportunities for African female industry leaders while attracting international investors and partners. So I'd like to recognize you, Valerie, and celebrate you this International Women's Day. So we have our speakers, everybody, our esteemed speakers, phenomenal women, powerful women and leaders in their fields. So right now we are going to go on to the questions. So I'm going to ask each of the speakers a few questions based on the themes that we have identified for Women's Day. And as they answer the questions, if you have further questions, please drop them in the box. Remember, the theme is Women Funding the Future. So we are looking at three areas that we identified: funding projects and helping organizations grow. So looking at funding, financing, and then we will also look at education for the future and look at global visibility and participation in international dialogues. So I would like to start off with Valerie. So Valerie, what inspired you to pursue a career in funding and impact investment? What are the biggest challenges women-led initiatives face in securing funding, and how can women in leadership positions drive more equitable funding? Valerie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks for giving me the floor. Please allow me to congratulate everyone in the room for taking the time to join this conversation. most valuable conversation. I mean, 50 years ago, our mothers had to request from our fathers the right to have a passport before they can travel. And only about 20 years ago, I remember when we all started this leadership um, movement, it would have been so much harder to find profile that you managed to put together, Liz, to join the conversation because it was just not, it was very unusual still. So congratulations, Liz, and your sister, Diana, for creating this platform with phenomenal global women to facilitate conversation and exchange. So my name is Valerie Name. I'm from Cameroon, already introduced. I'm very happy to be here. Unfortunately, I have a clash of agenda, so I have another webinar. So thank you, share my perspective and then just go off camera and whenever they call me on the other call, I will join. So sorry about that. Now, in terms of question, what inspired me to pursue a career in funding and impact investment? I've always loved finance. I believe that finance ruled the world, not in a negative connotation, but in a more positive, aspect. Because without money, you may have the best idea, the best convictions in the world, but there's only so much you can do. I'm a banker by profession, so I understand what it takes to make it happen, to raise funds, for example. And I was very shocked during my career to see the type of room or table that they reserve for women, as in if you are not married, you can't be asking for $1 million. If you don't have children, you don't qualify to run such a big organization, for example. So different, biases and a stereotype that really led me to think, you know what, this can be happening. And I think it's part of my personality as well. I don't complain much. I'm very focused on action. Let's look at the solution together. So that's what really led me to think, hold on a minute. I worked in London, Nigeria, Gabon, so many countries, and there were only few women in finance back then. Today is much better, but there is still room for improvement. And I said, okay, and even till today in Cameroon, I'm the only female with license as the Reals de Change, the change. So I'm the only woman trading FX. So many things that I felt it's not right. So creating Invicte was a very natural request because for the last 2 decades, I've been advocating for more women in power, more women in leadership, etc. So I said, okay, well, let's just create this space where, all the investors we meet globally who seems to be so enthusiastic about Africa and yet don't know or don't understand Africa, let's take them to meet those incredible female industrialists. So in a nutshell, Liz, that's what took me to start what I'm doing today.
Thanks, Valerie. What are the biggest challenges women-led initiatives face in securing funding?
Very good question. I think if you ask each of the ladies here, Ambriere, Anila, Elena, Lydia, each of us will probably have a different answer. But based on my own experience and based on my background, I believe that it's culture, number one. Generally speaking, this is global. It's not even Africa. It's just globally, you will find out that only 35% of women ask for a loan. I received a link from AFIS, Africa Financial Industrial Summit. It's a yearly platform, and they reposted one of the comments I made, I think about 2 years ago. And it's so sad because it's still so relevant. And where I was sharing my views that, statistically, only 35% of women have ever asked for a loan. So when you know that, America is great because America lives on loan, Europe is great because Europe lives on loan. So why should anyone stay away from loan? Women and African women specifically. So I think the biggest challenge is culture, is ignorance, and a bit of injustice. But injustice comes last because we're actually part of that injustice. Why? Because we don't showcase what we do. We don't share our stories. Nobody will do it for us if we don't do it ourselves. I've gathered few numbers. I think statistics always speak louder than even experience. And here I have 20 to 25% of businesses are led by women. Yet only 5% of large companies have a female CEO. In Africa, 25 to 30% of businesses are owned or led by women. And yet only 2% of VCs are received by women. Another statistic here, worldwide here, less than 30% of women have access to formal financing. In Africa, around 20% of women entrepreneurs have access to bank financing. So basically, it's a day-to-day, trade. And when it comes to underrepresentation in investment cycle, which is important to take note of, worldwide, less than 10% of seats on investment committees of major funds are held by women. This is a serious problem because who is going to defend the case or craft product or approve product or credit line? They are men, 90%. And only 8 to 12% of CEOs in large financial institutions are women. Women hold approximately 20% of executive position in global financial sector. In Africa, around 5 to 15% of executive position in banks or investment funds are held by women, and only 5% of CEO in major African. So technically, they mentioned the lack of training and support. I think it comes at a very latter stage because one thing leads to another. Because of that, women are left behind. So for me, those are the crucial, the crucial points. We are not we are not seated at the right table. We come at a lower layer of the ladder, and this has to be changed.
Thanks for sharing that. And lastly, on this specific question for you, according to McKinsey, while women make up 50% of the African continent's population, they represent only 10 to 15% of the formal sector business. So this discrepancy in business ownership and funding highlights a need for greater financial inclusion for women on the continent. So with your expertise and what you're doing, how can women in leadership positions drive more equitable funding opportunities to these women?
That's a very good question, and I think it's a very African question. And I believe that McKinsey did a study for the mere reason that if you take my country, which is Cameroon is only 30 million people. However, Liz, sit tight, Cameroon has 450 microfinances against 15 banks, 16 now, 16 against 450. Microfinance means even if you don't have a job, you can still get a loan. So I know this number very well because I spent almost 10 years in my family microfinance. And what we did was to come up with a model where people cannot just disappear and go to Dubai because you've given them money, $1,000 or $10,000. So we said, okay, you will come as a community, and basically we're not giving you the money, we're giving money to your communities. So there are thousands of solutions that can be crafted for such for this layer of the society. The book written by Mr. Yunus, who is now the president of Bangladesh. He wrote a book more than, I think, 2 decades now, where he called Money at the Bottom of the Pyramid. There's actually a lot more cash at the bottom of the pyramid than people think. People, from my experience, being poor does not mean that you are not serious with your cash, or that you actually people who take bigger loan will tend to disappear, will tend to not to pay back their loan than those who are coming to look for, those from the informal sector who come to seek for smaller amounts. So I think more and more banks and microfinances are changing the way they see banking in Africa, because banking in Africa is not banking in Europe or US. They are adopting the Asian model where you're actually lending to a community one, or you are lending based on mobile money. So that's why M-Pesa, MTN, Orange, mobile money, they've taken the space because people realize that even though you don't have a formal job, person or a less bankable person, it's just a different way to bank. And that is why generally in Africa, mobile money has become a bank.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for highlighting those very critical roles, especially how women can have more equitable funding. I would now like to pose a question to Elena. Elena, maybe you can also tell us what inspired you to do what you're doing, and give us some of your insights on the role of public and private partnerships play in supporting women-led projects.
Hi, everybody. My congratulations with this fantastic day that's remind us about the women's support, how it's important. And Lisa, thanks for this great idea gathering us in this day. Maybe I don't have such dramatic story to impress you how I struggled with some obstacles to make my career. I had 25 years corporate career in big corporation. I work in Accenture in Salt Lake City. I work in Bain. I work in certain big funds and corporation before moved to self-responsibility entrepreneurship role. And maybe it was the most challenging solution in my life. What I can say, all ladies, and what can I advise from my perspective of you, even the corporate career beckon you and create this safety environment when you can feel yourself protected. I never felt before this emotions when I started to speak from myself personally. My LinkedIn account exists since 2006. So it's like after 1 year that's this platform appeared, but it was very quiet. More than a decade before I had started to speak from myself, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that I can represent my values. I can't make impact through the investment and work only with people who's sharing with me the same values. And I love this the most of this, and maybe it's the key point of inspiring me to go forward.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in your perspective and your experience that women-led initiatives face in securing funding?
The most challenging in our mind, I think, because we inside of our inside of our beliefs fix on this about too much fix about the biases. I work with GCC region, the Arabic Gulf region. You know, it's the most conservative society, and we everybody knows a lot about this conservative society. But I just came back. I spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia, I don't speak about Dubai. Everybody knows that it's slightly different than the typical Arabic world. But I spend a lot of time in Qatar. I spend a lot of time in Abu Dhabi. That's more conservative city than Dubai, for example, in Riyadh. And I'm impressed how many opportunities create for women from the men supportive community if they demand. For example, in Saudi Arabia, this time I met several young ladies who has just 4 months baby, and they continue to work, and they ask the employer to create this daily care space in the office to bring to the office their babysitters, and they continue to balance in between this young mother role and their career. So maybe I would like to encourage you, don't care too much about the rude or unsupportive person. There are so many supportive people around us. Just focus your perspective and your mind to this direction, and you will attract these people in your life. I wish you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, the mindset that we have sometimes, discouraging ourselves from taking up opportunities or for applying for investment opportunities also prohibits us as women, from actually accessing funds. But I'd like to just move on to Lydia. Just let us know a bit more about your career and what inspired you to get into funding impact investment, and what innovative funding models have you seen work effectively for women entrepreneurs exactly? Please share your perspectives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Liz. I am really grateful to be here. Congratulations to everyone for International Women's Day. I, like Valerie, agree that there is so much that has been achieved by women, and there is so much more to be done. So for everybody who is pushing a rock up a hill, keep up the good work. So my name is Lydia Kemonto-Bosire. I'm the founder and CEO of 8B Education Investments. We are a fintech platform that specializes in facilitating lending to African students going to global universities. And it's quite important to highlight 3 things. The first thing is the global universities. The global universities story matters so much because Africa's place in shaping and building the future depends on Africans being in the places where the future is being built. And in many, many occasions, we're absent. So in US universities, for example, the African student body is about 5% on a good day. And the overwhelming number of students who are in those innovation ecosystems, because we have to think about where are global decision makers hiring from, and for better or worse, they're not hiring from the University of Nairobi. What is the presence of African students in the places where they're hiring from? And those numbers are not where they should be. So compared then with students, say, from India or China, which are regions of equal or comparable population size, we are really punching beneath our weight. So that is at the very front end what drives the work that we do. But the second point that I will make is on the financing. So I said that our company facilitates financing for African students to go to global universities. But the financing that we facilitate is very much on the innovative side, Liz, because it's about enabling banks and asset managers and others in the fixed income space to lend to an African student they otherwise would not lend to, because you cannot walk into a KCB in Nairobi and get a loan, a student loan. Across the continent, there's barely any place where you can do that. While again, in other regions, you can actually do that. And the reason for that is because of risk concern. So back to what Valerie said, what are the ways we can innovate, particularly given how technology, the tools that technology gives us? How do we innovate to enable the banks and lenders and others who would be able and willing to provide this financing? How do we innovate to enable them to manage their risk so they can lend? And so we do that and enable the lending to happen to students who otherwise either have no credit history or adequate collateral, or a cosigner. And that is really important. And the reason why that matters, that it's lending as opposed to just a scholarship, is that scholarships cannot scale. And I know that because I born and raised in Kenya, and I went to the US on full scholarship. And between my undergrad and grad education, I got my grad education, my master's and PhD in Oxford, my bachelor's and first master's in Cornell in the US. And between those two education experiences, I had about 5 years where I was working, but simultaneously applying for graduate schools, receiving excellent offers that didn't have enough financing. So that gap of scholarships that just isn't fillable by philanthropy is what leads young Africans to not show up in all the places that they could show up, because we're all waiting for that scholarship if we do not have adequate household income. And so what I'm really excited about is our ability to unlock that and to have greater presence of young Africa in all the places where the future is being built, unconnected with your household income or your luck, because scholarships truly, after a certain level of qualification, it's really luck. The third point that I'll make is, what is this for, right? Why do we care about what we do? At Davos this year, and I met Liz there, as well as Valerie and a number of others at the Africa House. One of the initiatives that we launched is something we're calling the 50 by 35 initiative, mobilizing $50 billion into initiatives that are transforming young Africa into the innovation and productivity engine for the 21st century. In other words, the thing that we are doing that is at a very tactical level, right? Saying, we need more young Africans in global universities, isn't an end in itself. It's really leaning into this massive population transition that the world is in, which is that the young people of the world for the next 50 years will be in the African continent. And I say 50 years facetiously, truly going forward, are on the African continent, while the vast majority of opportunities and the places where the gaps will be, the talent gaps and shortages, will be in the OECD. And it isn't very easy for a hiring manager in a company in Germany or New York or London to hire out of a Kenyan university for a role that is in London or New York or Munich. It is a lot easier for them to do that if that student has a credential that is recognizable in that area. And that's one of the lanes that we're solving for under the 50 by 35 initiative. But there's a range of other lanes that some of you might already be working in education and training and upskilling that is geared towards the global labor market and towards opportunities that are in the world, in addition to the opportunities that are on the continent. But we're being very honest with ourselves, which is in a context where we're putting roughly 1 million young people in the labor market every month on the continent and generating roughly 3 million jobs a year. That delta is too big for us to delude ourselves that we will be able to create those jobs at home. So what we're building is part of that bigger story. So really, in summary, we're a fintech platform specialized in lending to African students going to global universities in service of this bigger goal of where Africa needs to be in the 21st century. I've told you a little bit about my own backstory that drives me here. Before 8B, I worked at the UN, I worked at the World Bank. I was very excited about the work that I did. But one of the things that I realized, and Liz, I'm sure you share this experience and others as well, is that experience of being the only person of your lived experience in every room. And there are many ways of changing that. And this work that you're doing with Phenomenal Women is one of the ways that we change that. My path and what I chose as a way to make that change of being the only person in the room is thinking sort of 5 steps back. Why am I the only person there? And how do I change that? And my pathway was, there's not enough of me in the places where all of these places recruit from. And the reason for that is that there isn't enough financing for those young, ambitious Africans to get in those universities from which everybody recruits. And if I can change that plumbing, then I can change the face of who's in the room of global decision-making. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you so much for sharing that, the 50-30 initiative, and how can someone concretely have access to that? If today somebody in a rural community in Uganda or Kenya or somewhere is listening to this, right after this, how can they access this program? And I was really impressed by, the depth and the thought that goes behind creating such a program to assist African students who will be the majority population in several years, because 50% of the population in Africa is under the age of 20 or 30 at the moment as we speak. So how does one access, and how does someone access concretely this opportunity? And do you have a target number that you want to reach? Like, how many people would you want to reach in a given period?
Those are all great questions. So at the level of the 50 by 35 initiative, the ambition is driving financing into all of the organizations, entities, companies that are working in different lanes that all in collection will enable young Africa to access the global labor market at scale. So the lane of 8B is quite particular. It's about global universities, accessing global universities. And I'll tell you in a second about that. But there are other lanes in this space. There are others under the umbrella of the 50 by 35 initiative, whose work is about skilling young Africa to access remote work. And that is really important and highly, highly scalable. And then there are others who are working much earlier at the high school level, which is creating a superhighway for young African STEM talent at a high school level to then sharpen their ambition geared towards global or regional universities or world-class universities. And then there's a wide variety of entities that are working across that space. For the 8B specific area, which is enabling African students to access financing to attend global universities, our website is 8B, the number 8, the letter B, .Africa, and I'll put it in the chat shortly. And that's a place where you have something we call an ambition finder that helps students then figure out or tell us, what are you looking for? Do you already know how to apply to a global university? In which case, go here. Do you have an offer from a global university and what you're looking for is financing? Then go here. Do you not even know where to start? And you want information about like which university, how to apply, what's a good statement? How do I even position myself? What do I apply for? Then we give students guidance, and this is all for free, guidance on how to expand their ambitions, because we believe Africa belongs in the world. We need to be in all the places where, where the world is driving forward. And some of what is missing is informational, but on the whole, for those who are informed and already have the interest and have taken the steps, where they get stuck mostly is the financing. So making sure the financing is there. But the starting point is getting onto the 8B platform, 8B.Africa, and let your friends and family know that this is the place where over time, this is where ambitious young Africa will gather. So let them know, let them get in there early and start the process of qualifying, right? Because over time, as a student is going through and is finally getting a loan, that they aren't. It's very hard to lend to somebody you don't know anything about. There's a lot of information that is required, a lot of engagement that is required. And so we very much hope that that you can let your communities and friends know about this. And then we'd be happy to answer more questions. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you so much. And please drop in the group the link to the website that you've mentioned. I'm sure many people are interested in that. So I would like to move on to Ambrielle. Could you, yes, there you go. Let me put you on the spotlight. So Ambrielle, according to the World Bank, if women had the same opportunities to participate in the global economy at the same level as men, the global GDP could increase by 20%. This highlights the enormous untapped potential that women contribute to the global economy. So given your work in what you are doing, can you share with us how you can drive more equitable funding opportunities to women, so that we can try and increase that 20%, and some of the challenges that women-led initiatives face in securing funding in your line of work and your experience?
Absolutely. And Liz, before I do that, I just want to thank you for convening all of us ahead of such an important day, and to also thank everyone for participating, because I think that's step one, right? It's collaboration. That's how we increase the numbers across the globe. When we think about this and we kind of understand that the Commission on the Status of Women was founded in 1946 by the UN. It's a function at the time of the UN's Economic and Social, I think, Council. So almost 79 years ago. So we're into this now, and we're still fighting. We've still, as of 2024, earned an average of 85% of what men earned. And that is just, unbelievable. 80 years in, and we all know of everything that happened prior to that. So when we think about how do we earn more, we have so many interlocking systems of oppression to fight through. The overlapping forms of disadvantages that women face specifically, our gender, our sex, our class, our ability to rise is really difficult when we're in these corporate environments, when we're trying to be entrepreneurs, when we're trying to lead from the front. And I always say that our opportunity starts at home. It starts as young women when we're being raised in environments that tell us that we can be anything that we want to be. So we also have to think about how that mentality shapes our young women, our nieces, our cousins. When we speak that to them and we know the statistics on the other side, we also have to prepare them for those interlocking systems of oppression by preparing them through education, by preparing them through thought leadership, by preparing them through mentorship, and connecting them with the right sources to make these things happen, regardless of where they stand. Liz asked me about my line of work. I work at the intersection of culture, fashion technology, and building systems through consulting services to really help specifically marginalized groups, women and people of color, break through barriers so they can launch careers in the creator sector. And when we think about that, we have to start with looking at who leads in that sector. If we just take fashion, for instance, in the luxury world, women shop about 70 to 80%, or make, I should say, about 70 to 80% of all consumer purchases in the luxury world. Women do that. But when we look at the C-suite, male appointments make up 76.9% of them. So when we think about that and we see that gap, then we have to look at another gap. Chief sustainability officers. My organization accelerates sustainability and circularity to drive the circular economic frameworks forward. And we've found that 60% of global chief sustainability officers are women. So if we have 76.9% of all CEOs in the luxury sector as men, and then 60% of global chief sustainability officers as women, there's a big gap between who makes the final decision. So we have to think about how we close these gaps. And that goes back to protection and prevention and partnership. Those are the 3 Ps I want you to remember. We have to protect each other through collaborative organizations such as this, through what I foster at Fusion Fashion Tech Society, and the organization I just built, A More Humane World, the consulting leg of what I do. We also have to understand within these communities, it's not just about showing up to listen, it's about showing up to participate and to partner. So that we can help each other and lead each other to the shift that we all want to see in the end. And it's not happening fast enough. And the last thing I will leave you with on this question is remember that as we speak to the young women that we're bringing into this, and they tell us things, and this is a question I get today from the members of Fusion that are 30, 40, 50 years old. I am trying to determine what I want to be. They're still asking that question. And I want to remind everyone that the important question to instill in our young women at an early age is remember to think about what you don't want to be. And then we lead by our actions and examples to help them cross over so that they get the economic power they need to rise above the circumstances and the barriers that exist. And Liz, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially the protection, prevention, and partnership. Partnerships are key in progressing. Do you have any specific partnerships that you've done that have led to women having sustainable financing or supported any of those, supported any initiatives?
Absolutely. On the nonprofit side, the United Nations Fashion and Lifestyle Network has been a great network to be a part of because of the access to grants there. We have not received any yet, but the resources there for us when we get ready to apply for them. So as a partner, that helps open us up to a very global audience. So very happy to have them as part of Fusion Fashion Tech Society. A More Humane World is very new. I'm in partnership discussions as we speak, and a lot of those are with impact investors on the sustainability side. It's a for-profit organization, so that gives us more access to larger organizations that can be a part of a more humane world. The Digital Economist is a fellowship group that I'm a part of. I do advocate for them because I do think that having multi-vertical people acknowledge what you do and having them have access to the resources that you provide. And it's changing that type of thought leadership within groups that are outside of your sector is just as important as it is to do it within your sector. So I advocate for joining those kind of organizations because they lead to more financial opportunities for everyone. So back over to you, Liz.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the important again of partnerships, knowing where to get the grants, who to partner with, who to network with. The Digital Economist is a very strong platform as well. So thanks for sharing that. I would now like to move to Anila. Could you please put your camera on? Okay, I'm going to give you the spotlight. So Anila, based on the work you are doing, what inspired you, first of all, to do the work? And in particular, looking at your credentials, supporting women in your communities, women entrepreneurs. Tell us a bit about what inspired you and how you support them.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. I loved listening to all my fellow speakers. And I think what really inspired me is to see my own mom. Well, I grew up in Pakistan, in south of Pakistan, which is Karachi, a very cosmopolitan city, and very business oriented as well. But I haven't seen many women of my age, or particularly when I was young, seeing my mom into all those things, or talking about any business plan, or talking about all what she was doing was cooking for 20 people in the house. And that was her purpose of life, of feeding children, feeding family. And that was the highlight of her day, when she said, "I've cooked 3 meals," and all those things. And I always questioning her as her second daughter, because I have an older sister who's also my partner in my business and my ventures, and my 2 younger brothers. And I was always the rebellious one in my family, because I was not kind of more encouraged to study in a co-ed school or college and other things. And as I grew older, I came to know many different challenges that the girl or the woman go across in our community. And Pakistan is, of course, a very underdeveloped country, even though there are very modernized techs and everything growing now. But the literacy rate still in Pakistan is below 52% for women. And this lack of education has always, was the biggest barrier. So for me, it's what I understand now. But when I was growing up, my biggest inspiration was to see my mom, who wanted to be a fashionista, and she used to do all her our clothes for special occasions and everything. And I always asked her, why don't you do something for yourself? And the first thing she said, but I don't have resources, I don't have the possibility, I don't have the opportunity. And the main thing that she said is, I have to cook for so many people in the house, even though we had servants, we have maids and everything. But she was the leader of doing all. So she is my biggest inspiration and my source to see that there are so many, even though we are the upper middle class family in Pakistan. And I've been very, very privileged to go into the best schools and best college in Pakistan, but not many could do so. So what possibilities I was thinking in my head, being a very young girl, that if I am privileged and not others, or I am grateful that I am able to achieve all those things, or I can have access to quality education, but why the children who are standing outside my school don't have that possibility? So that is something which going to maybe discuss more. So my inspiration for my work was my mom. And then later on, when I got married in 2002 and came to Switzerland, I found out that my sister, who is in Pakistan, who got married in a very good family and well-to-do family and everything, she also wanted to become something in fashion, and we were always into fashion. So it's and what we used to do is I saw my mom doing something from used curtains and tablecloths and everything. So that concept of upcycling, which is very much in mod and very much in fashion these days, being sustainable and all these things. I saw my mom doing that, and that gave us like pitching, patching work and all those things. And for even today we do that. So it's really like taking the source from someone who have no idea of fashion, who haven't been to any tech universities or fashion industries and everything. So it's really to see that one person can bring a beautiful shift in anyone's life. So in my life is my mom, and of course my sister. We joined her hands together to create this brand, to help the girls from our own family and our own community, to see how we can raise awareness. And not everyone wants to be a fashion designer or fashionista, but at the same time, what possibilities we can create for them. So I'm sure I've answered that question, but if there is something more I can add, please let me know. Lisa.
Thank you so much for highlighting especially how you've created your brand to help people in the community, and I think to also create income in the community that you live, that you're from. Did you face any barriers while creating this brand, whether there were cultural, religious, or social barriers? Did you face any pushbacks, and how did you overcome? If
Let
you
me count, Lisa. I don't have so many fingers to
highlight
count all my challenges, but I'm sure all our listeners who are here and our speakers as well, there is nothing in women's life which are not full of challenges and barriers and all those things that we come across. And I just posted today one thing that came into my mind that we always say, when you don't find a door, you make one. All right, we make one, but then what? We do enter from that door, and then what about the others who are behind, who are with us, who are looking upon us, who are taking some inspiration from us as well? So, like, opening doors means that you take everyone along with you who are willing to take that, leap of faith and stepping forward. For me, creating this brand was not only to say that we love fashion and we want to bring this change and we want to have this impact. But the idea was that Shan Ann, which is Shanila and Anila, is the fusion. And Imbriel, I'm sure I would love to be to do some work with you as well. So this fusion of East and West and the fusion of fashion and education merged together. I had no idea how this brand is going to land into London Fashion Week, or maybe somewhere, in Switzerland or in Pakistan or elsewhere in Dubai. No idea. I was simply, using some hashtags on my Instagram without even launching the websites, without even doing, anything, because all those things that would come in the flow of, I believe in my mission, I believe in my passion, but what's next? How am I going to start doing something without any money? I didn't ask my father. My brothers were younger, they were still studying, and I had no one, and I had no idea what kind of this funding or investment would be needed. I only knew this is my purpose of life, and I want to have fashion and education together and fusion, because I live in Switzerland, my sister lives in Pakistan. So bridging between East and West and fashion and education is still today that drives me every morning and motivates me with this hope that nothing is impossible. And starting, really the biggest barrier that we faced was to convince the people around us to just not to give us the funding, but to believe in this project and just to give us some guidance. So we didn't have any coaches, we didn't have any mentors or other people. This idea of Shanann's landed in the kitchen of my mom, sitting, seeing her cooking, and giving us this hope that if we would start to bring this change through our fashion brand. So anyone, from our family or from our community in Switzerland, Pakistan, I worked with people in different places elsewhere as well, to really believe that money is not the only barrier. All the barriers that we have is in our mind, and we can unlock that if we have meaningful connections, if we meet like-minded people, around us. So, that was the biggest challenge for me, to understand how to stand and persevere in this society where women are not allowed to even have proper education, or stepping out of their house or even inside, to think about this thing. They all call it hobby. They will do it for a couple of months and then they would shut down and all these things. But if we can still stand today after 10 years, that means that we still believe in our vision, and the people who are on board with us, women, girls, youth, and who still believe that, if these two women out of nothing can build something, that means we can all try to do or take any imperfect actions to come this far. And my biggest motive now is to raise awareness as much as I can through my work, and to bring more and more, education on that funding should not be the only barrier.
Thank you so much, Anila. You've really motivated us that someone with a passion, a vision, can conquer all those gender biases that come up. And having a supportive family to support you, your business as well, has made it grow. And, just bringing in East and West, the ideas together, and having your brand here in Europe, having your brand in Asia, that's just amazing. That's just amazing. Thank you for sharing. So we now move on to the segment on education for the future, and we have a few questions there. I would like to pull in Diana to co-chair this event, this next segment, which we'll be looking into. You've all mentioned the importance of education, even in financing, the importance of having going to great universities to compete in the current job market. So we now want to just look into that deeper, looking at education for the future. And I realized that I didn't introduce myself when I started, but I'll quickly introduce myself and hand over to Diana, who will take over. My name is Lisa Sekaja, and I'm one of the co-founders of Phenomenal Women Global, a nonprofit that was started in 2018. I'm an international human rights lawyer working with an international organization as well. I am also I'm also very interested in sustainable development, and I'm interested in the circular economy and reuse of waste, waste management, and using it for other things. So I am actually a CEO of a company based in Uganda that looks at handling waste and using waste for different products. And I'm very passionate about women's empowerment and about supporting women entrepreneurs, and also just supporting women leaders in this world to grow. Because we know sometimes as women of color as well, it's harder for you to move up in your career or even to access funding. So, but with the relevant tools and the work that we do at Phenomenal Women Global, giving women that visibility and giving them educational tools to advance in their careers, soft skills to advance in their businesses and careers makes a big world of difference. So that's who I am. I'll hand over to Diana to introduce herself and bring in the aspects of education. Diana, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to all the ladies who have contributed so far. Yes, my name is Diana Bagarukayo, and I'm one of the co-founders of Phenomenal Women Global. I'm based in Uganda, and my background is in education. So I'm an education expert, previously worked for the World Bank, the Irish Embassy, and UNDP as an economist. And I now have a startup. So I have my own company called Nzani Creative Hub, and we focus on giving skills training to youth and women, and in particular in the creative area. So we work with artists and artisans. So I'm very passionate about education and about skills. I just want to pick up on the conversation that we've had so far, and I'm going to bring you back to the floor, Anila, just to pick up on some of the interesting things that you said. You mentioned that it's not always about financing. It's not always about financing. It's also about making useful partnerships. It's also about, your state of mind and having a passion about something. And I'm here representing a lot of the people on the Phenomenal Women who are in Africa. And the two things that we're very passionate about, that we think will cause development, are one, financing, because there are a lot of initiatives, there are a lot of projects. People think if I just had money, I would change the world. So financing, and then again, education, because education empowers people and enables them to open doors and enter different spaces. So before we go into education, I want to just touch briefly on financing, because I know you've done a lot of initiatives. I was reading about the work you've done in Pakistan with the women and around education and empowering women. So where does financing come into that? Where are the different sources of financing for some of these initiatives? And I want to speak for the women who are on the platform today, who are looking for financing for their own projects and their own initiatives. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. I think, yes, as I said, the financing or funding something that we never looked for in the beginning. The only thing was how we prepare ourselves and how we are ready to follow for our vision, and vision which we still stand today, because we know that the literacy rate in Pakistan is below 50%, and how, first of all, to raise the awareness and creating a vision for the person I'm talking to. If there are more than 22 million people in Pakistan, I cannot do everything for everyone, and that I should not be actually, but how I'm creating that ripple effect in touching one child's or one girl's life. So I'll just share an example of my teacher from a very underserved village or a very slum area. She came into our school where I am partnering for a Montessori, if our listeners know what is Montessori pedagogy. And I'm connected with this project of Education Without Borders from Netherlands. And also, I am an educator for over 22 years. So for me, it's like I know the purpose and the reality that education can bring into anyone, like a child. Even till today, I'm educating myself for many, many different things. And when I started this, when I was in that, to be really very quick, I was in that area and I was looking for people who are, or girls or boys, to be more in the balance equation. Whoever is willing to be on board to have this training, which is Montessori International training, which is recognized globally. And I was speaking with certain number of families. There comes a girl who was a widow, got married to someone who was 20 years older than her age and everything. And she didn't say anything to me. I just saw a spark in her eyes. And I knew that she wants to do something for herself. I'm just talking about one person in the entire, 22 million. And she was just looking at me because she thought that she would not be able to talk to me as well, or to say that I would like to take this training, because we knew that we are offering this training, but in return, she has to, or whoever is going to be on board is going to believe in that vision of why education is important and how she's going to source the amount for that education. So she thought, I'm going to sell my jewelry, I'm going to sell all what I have is utensils in my house, because I want to be on board, and I don't want to be a widow forever and just, going in my colony with my head down and shoulders down. I want to have my shoulders and my head up. So just speaking to her, and this is like, one-on-one, I would not call it mentoring, coaching, whatever. It was one-on-one, heart-to-heart conversation with that person. And fast forward, she took the training, we provided in everything. And we told her that the only thing that she has to go through is through the conveyance and, the traveling charges and everything was on board with us. But the passion that she had to complete that training for the entire year still lives today. And she's a successful teacher. The funding, how it come to me is, I simply did crowdfunding at that time. I just contacted some of my friends, very close friends and very close family. And I said, this is the girl, this is how I'm going to, fund her for $5,000, more or less, for her entire education for that period. And the authenticity of how I structured my my way of communicating with the people and connecting with them and sending them all the reports and finance, this is how I need, this is what is for conveyance and everything, just small bits. I had no idea if crowdfunding would be successful at that time. And I just did I think it was wemakeit.com, because I live in Switzerland. So that was the easiest platform, WeMakeIt. But there are so many others. And someone said, yeah, but you're going to lose your money. You need to have publicity. You need to have marketing and all those things. I just said, I just use my voice. I use my passion, and I just connect with people. And if I'm very spiritual in that sense that, if I believe in something, universe will make it happen. God will make it happen for me. And I could successfully give her the training, and we are ongoing projects for other girls. So I'm only using one drop in the ocean to create that ripple effect. And in return of that funding that I provided for her training, she is working and she is getting almost, I would say, $150 a month, which is a fair amount in Karachi, where she is in a school. And she's she's putting a bit of her salary that she comes every month to fund someone else, even though it would be $100 in 5,000 USD dollars or something. So even if that little amount, she would be contributing for someone else. So now she would be taking this training. The others would be taking the training as well, one by one, because it's internationally trained and all. And then, so for summing up, I would say that at that point, I started crowdfunding. I know there are different foundations and different institutions that I could approach. And coming from Switzerland, having this tag on me that I'm a Swiss citizen could help me to get the funding easily in Pakistan. But I wanted to be responsible, that I could still sleep at peace, and I could still fund someone without taking the huge amount from someone. And our foundations, because everything what they want is ROI, what is a return on my investment. And I don't want to do anything that would bring pressure to myself or to my community or the girls that I am supporting. I did it on a very small scale. It's coming, and whatever training we provide, either I go for crowdfunding, either I go, and now I don't even need that, because if I just send an email and people, they can send me money, and they know what this money will be used for. So that's how I started this educational project in Pakistan, out of, pure hope, pure, authentic, purpose, and connecting with people heart to heart. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. That's excellent. So crowdfunding and your passion then has created impact. How has it been working with women? Because you're working primarily with ladies, and they're leaders. They're the ones leading some of your initiatives. So how have you prepared these women for leadership roles?
Okay, so when we take anyone on board, albeit men or boys or youth or girls, we do a bit of brainstorming. It's not because we are coming to help you. You are there to help us. So in a Montessori pedagogy, there is a quote which Maria Montessori says, "Help me to help myself." It's really, I'm helping you, but you need to help yourself. And in return, for me as well, how I'm helping myself to see, because I'm not going to follow up on her like, every single second. For us, even if it's for education purpose or for the fashion purpose, we see what kind of talent that girl possess and what is she willing to step up for. So first we do is the grooming thing, how to build up your self-esteem. What are your conditions where you live in? What is an environment that you belong to? Are you getting some support or not at all? Do you have any kind of financial support or whatever, even if you're earning or doing businesses from home, like cooking business and things like that. So first is a self-grooming session that we do one-on-one, which is very in a normal setting in their houses, and to find out what their skills are. So one girl, she was very motivated to hold a beauty parlor in her house. So we knew that this girl has some talent, and we used her talent of, just doing threading, facial, and everything. Already has or possess something. If she doesn't have any willingness to even find out that I am someone and I can do something, funding would come later. Everything is secondary. First is who I am as a person, who I am as a woman. What is my role in my society? What is the role for myself to look into the eyes of the people and to say I exist, and I belong. So this is the sense of belonging we work for. And once we know that sense, the self-esteem and confidence is building up little by little, then only we start to provide some skill training or any leadership training. And do you think that I have taken any coaching for leadership? None at all. It's only what I had gone through made me talk in front of you all, and that's it. Yes, I did do some Toastmasters, but that's only like for 2 months to understand how to structure my thing. But it's really like leadership is all about not in charge of someone. Leadership is all about, or being a leader is about taking care of the people in my charge. like all the people who are around me, maybe I don't know if I'm a leader or not. I don't call myself a leader until I see those ripple effects being created in, in the community around me. So I am just trying to take care as a person who is in my charge, whoever it is, and trying to see what is in you. For example, for Diana or Elena, Lisa, whoever is around me, I try to take all the things positive that I learned from you all unconsciously without you guys knowing as well, and I take it back to my community. This is the way you stand, this is the way you talk, this is the way you use your gestures. So all those skills will help you to develop yourself as a person you are. And then okay, now I know what I want to do. So now the resources and the sources and all those things would come, later on. And then the funding would be the ending part. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Diana. Well,
Yes, thank you very much. From what you've said, you identify certain skills in these girls, in these women, and then develop those. So indirectly, you're actually doing mentoring and empowerment and building them up into leaders. Thank you for that. I want to bring Umbrella on board now.
Dana,
And
could Lydia
yes,
speak first because she might have to go off?
okay,
Then
sure.
Gabrielle.
Okay, sure. So Lydia, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And it's very exciting to read and hear about the work that you're doing for African students. And as you said, bringing them into the university so that they're on the table as well when important decisions are being made. So I want to ask you the two questions that I asked Anila as well. One, the first one, for those who are online and are looking for funding for initiatives, what are the different sources of funding you have benefited from? You talked about the $50 million mobilization, etc. Is that equity or whatever? If you could just tell us about some of the possible sources of financing first. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that financing ends up being a limiting factor for very many things. So it is valuable when there is a big vision. It's valuable when there is a problem that has been identified. But when you cannot match that with financing, that does not lead to the outcomes that we want to see. And we know the numbers. I think Valerie may have mentioned some of them. I know some of them are in the air we breathe around female entrepreneurs, for example, on the VC side that receive funding. Those numbers are just vanishingly small compared to the demand. And so I believe strongly that we do need more financing. On my end, we have funded our company HB through VC funding. So we have been one of those few roses growing in the desert, the women-led entities that have received venture capital funding. And that has been valuable. We have received concessionary debt for the purposes of our de-risking project, for the financing. And then we have had unlocked bank lending for the purposes of enabling our students to access financing. So we have gone through all of the places that it's possible to go through to find financing and have found some success, but very much are respectful of how difficult it is for people to access this. I've also been such a grateful member of the Echoing Green community, that is a social entrepreneurs fellowship, where I have found fellow travelers who are also willing and able to let us know where other sources of funding are of either concessionary or grant type. But because what we're building is a return-seeking scalable entity, we have not shied from return-seeking capital. Over to you, Diana.
And for most of the university students that you fund to come to the US or universities abroad, what courses are they doing, and is there emphasis on STEM?
That's a great question. We have to respond to the signals being sent by the market. And I studied politics. I have a doctorate in politics. I'm not a physicist. And here we are building a company whose first few years do focus a lot on STEM. The reason for that is when you're building an entity that we want to be inevitable, like we are, it's really important to lean into the things that we no longer have to guess. We do not have to guess that in the US, if you have a STEM or STEM designated degree, you will get 2 more years of optional practical training, which allows you to have 2 more years of building a professional network, which allows you 2 more years of building the possibilities of where you're going to land and cultivate your possible work and additional grad school, additional accelerators. There's all sorts of things that you can do when you have time. And that's what being in a STEM designated program gives you, which is different from Canada, which does not have the same emphasis. So it really varies geography by geography. But our first emphasis has been in the US, and it has been for STEM designated programs for the purposes of building the track record that these are the lanes that work. Over time, there will be a wider range of entities that can be or programs that can be supported. For now, that's the orientation.
And are you getting a lot of female students coming to do STEM subjects?
So our current student body is about 36% female, and that is not where we would like to be, but it's a lot better than average, right? Because on average, women are not self-selecting into STEM programs, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. I do see a future where we can be a lot more female-oriented, where we can raise debt pools that are exclusively focused on female students to be encouraged to enter into these programs. So we do have a future in which there is more women as a proportion of the total student body than we have had to date, but so far it's been about a third. Science and technology is, for a range of reasons that start a lot younger in our society, is not a space where many women are often encouraged to be in. And there's a lot of work to be done further upstream to be changing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And please continue the great work that you're doing with your education organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I might have to dash off, but I'm so grateful
Yes.
for the work that you do.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to bring Abriel.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, how are you?
I am good, and yourself?
Good, good. I need to try and pin you on. Okay, great. So looking at your profile and the work that you've done, I see that you've done quite a bit in fashion. You've also done quite a bit in the technology side with some of the work that you've done around that. So I just wanted to find out from you, first of all, what have been some of the challenges in terms of building capacity, particularly of women, in your organization or in the spaces that you work?
Great question, Diana. And, at this intersection of fashion and culture and tech and sustainability, we have a lot of opportunities currently, thankfully, because of tech, but we also have a lot of limitations. So when you ask, how do you build capacity? I always go back to a story from university. As a student at Goldsmiths in London, I had the pleasure and the privilege, I should say, of working in an elementary school teaching young students about their future opportunities in the second grade level. So these students were between 8 and 9. And I taught them every single day that I wasn't in school. And I remember specifically one of the students was from Romania. His parents did not speak any English. And another student was from Ghana. These two students clashed. They didn't get along. And the reason they didn't is because the little girl from Romania, because her parents did not speak English at home, she would sometimes speak Romanian. And the little girl from Ghana would show up in a dashiki and her hair in braids. They didn't understand cultural nuances. And so what I did in that role as someone who was at the time 19, I created a culture week because it wasn't just an issue with these two students. It was a pervasive issue with the whole school center. It was a public school in the East End of London, in an area that was impoverished and marginalized. And it was an opportunity to see how when we unlearn, we start to learn. So the Culture Week transitioned all those students and made them think about the opportunities to learn from each other, which is step one in building capacity. It's how we learn from each other. It's putting people in spaces to learn from each other. So I carried that into my organization until this day. And every facet of everything I've done in my career, that's been a big part of it, is the unlearning. So when I have summits and I have dinners, like we host at Fusion Fashion Tech Society, a no permission dinner. One of the number one questions I receive outside of how do I register for the dinner, the second one is, who's coming to dinner? I never answer that question. I don't even answer it for media, who's showing up. The reason I don't answer that question is because we've gotten so conditioned to worrying about who else is going to be a part of what we join, that we forget that the goal is to unlearn so that we can learn and then collaborate to help each other grow. So building capacity has a lot to do with understanding that your voice matters in every stage of the process, even if you don't know who's showing up to the table. And one of the things I also do with Fusion Fashion Tech Society, during our summits, we had interns, lots of them, and they had a lot of tasks that they helped me with to get the summit off the ground. It was our inaugural summit during Climate Week, New York City, United Nations General Assembly. I leased out the space at the Fashion Institute of Technology to host this Fashion Sustainability and Circularity Summit during Climate Week, New York City. And the students thought that their work was done. They had done all the backstage work. They had done all the heavy lifting of the guest list and making sure that all the people were registered. I put them on stage. I told them a day before, you're going to have your own panel. And you're going to talk about how you see tech integrated into the fashion world at your current positioning and how you see that going to help you make better consumer choices as you grow in this industry, and how you're going to use it on the design side and the consumer side. How are you wanting to see tech integrated? And they were on a panel where they got to see that their voice mattered at every stage. It mattered backstage, but it also matters in the middle, and then it matters on stage. And I think owning our voice, but also understanding, which is very important, that privilege looks different across the globe, and so does poverty. So privilege looks different in the global north than it does in the global south, and so does poverty. It looks different in South Asia than it does on the continent of Africa. And if we take the continent of Africa, for example, we have 30% of the world's mineral reserves in Africa. We have a population with 70% of the youth under the age of 30 that are in the working class. We have great opportunity, but yet we also know that in Africa, the tech infrastructure, when you think about just the internet, just basic internet, 43% of the continent has access to the internet. So when we talk about change, we have to also understand accessibility. And we talk about capacity building. We also have to understand, is the tech infrastructure there to support AI? Is it there to support blockchain? Now we have to bring that into the educational system. It's the curriculum and the professors where they need to be able to upskill the workforce so that they're not being trained to work for other people, but so that they're being trained to be entrepreneurs. And so with that, I think it's really important for us to understand that there's great opportunity to build, but there's more opportunity also for us to help each other unlearn. When we think the facts are there, 50 million people live in modern slavery globally. That's a huge number. 77 million of them are on the continent of Africa. 71% of those victims of modern slavery are women. Women and children are impacted the most. The fashion and textile industry is a huge contributor to that, specifically fast fashion. But when we take things like Cantamonto Market, it burned down. It's one of the largest secondhand clothing markets in Ghana. One of the questions I always ask people, should it have ever been rebuilt? The reason I ask that question, and it always makes people think, well, it's an opportunity for the communities to earn money. But is it? And you have to ask ourselves the hard questions because as it is an opportunity for the communities to earn money, it's doing damage to the sustainable land development. It's creating food insecurity because of the microplastics. Once those containers come across from the global north of all those secondhand clothing, now we have the microplastics going into the guts of the fish that are staying in the waterway because of all the waste that is produced by markets like Cantamonto Market. It's not the only one, but it's a good example. And now we have food insecurity. We have a big textile waste landfill that's causing sustainable land development issues. So we have lack of sustainable land development. And on top of it, we're actually asking the market, the people, the vendors to sell trash that's coming from the global north. Branded items that we're now selling when we have the capacity with 30% of the minerals there for everyone to be upskilled to manufacture through use of natural resources. So we have Angora goats, we have cotton, as everyone knows. We have all of these natural resources, and we lost all those skills. All those local artisans lost their skills because we made them focus on global north mentality of fast fashion, luxury brands, and taking all of that into being successful. That's where it comes down to. So once we start thinking and unlearning our vision of success, we can also start earning profits. Localized communities can start creating again on their own, passing down intergenerational knowledge and earning a profit. And that creates a different type of economic mobility for the entire community, as opposed to them working in factories, basically stretch shops, or as opposed to them selling secondhand clothing. So back to you, Diana.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's straight up my alley. We definitely have a lot of resources in our countries and skills that people need to go back to. But how can we use technology, because technology now we're looking at it as being something that is leveling all of us, that's bringing all of us, whether you're in a developed country or a developing country. How can we use technology? How can we use AI to empower and educate people?
Absolutely. Let's think about it as an example here. When we think about technology in places that are more developed, let's take the Eastern Cape area, for example, in the continent of Africa, right? If we go to Eastern Cape, where there's a plethora of Angora goats, and we know that luxury retailers have decided that those Angora goats are very valuable. So what they do is they ask the communities in Eastern Cape to shear the goats. And then we have the raw materials so that we can produce mohair shredders, so we can produce mohair jackets. Here's what they're not doing. They're not actually building any tech hubs or innovation hubs or manufacturing houses so that those communities in Eastern Cape can complete the production process so that they can actually export and be the original producers. Instead, they want the raw material to go to places like Italy, to go to places like London, because on the tag it's more valuable for it to say it was made in Italy, for it to say it was made in the US, And you can do that once the raw material is inside of your country. So this is one of the capacities where I think you can really see how tech can be applied. So one thing that can happen here is, first of all, when you have a pay per shear mentality, which is so detrimental to health of the shearers, and people don't understand, they're not paid by the hour, they're not paid by salary, they're paid per goat sheared. So you have damage to the goat. You have damage also to equitable earnings for the producers and for the vendors and for the farmers. So there are many issues here. So how can tech be applied? When you have a developed place like the area around Eastern Cape where you have a high percentage of internet use, what you can do is that every single goat can have an NFC chip. Currently, they're tagged with numbers. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a way for them to decide which goat to shear next. Instead of having them tagged with numbers, we can tag them with an NFC chip, which is basically the same chip that is on your credit card. So every time you tap to pay, that little chip that allows that is the same chip that can go on the goat instead of the number tagging. Once we put that chip on the goat, now we can connect it to what's called the blockchain. The blockchain is a ledger. That's all it is. And it is a recorded ledger, meaning every transaction that happens stays there on the blockchain. So every time a goat is sheared, then it is recorded on the blockchain. Now we know what farm the goat is on. Now we know where the fabric came from, and we also know who the shearer is. So we can make sure that that shearer receives equitable pay for what they just did. Now we can also know where it's coming from. So we can make sure that the country that produced it is actually getting credit for the work that they did. So now that's inclusion. That's how we get to representation. That's how we get to inclusion. Because when people put on that sweater and they see that it's made in Italy, they don't know all the work that happened before the actual fabric got to Italy. So I think blockchain, AI, you can see the integration there. AI is going to enable that data to be collected, and so that we can see that 50% of the world comes from the continent of Africa. 50% of the world. And AI lets us aggregate that data to see where farms is coming from, so those farms get credit, but not only so that they get credit, so that they can also have access to funding, so that they can reach out for more funding because they're producing the raw material, so that they can continue to get that. So we can implement technology there. On the educational side of implementing technology, we need to create innovation hubs. There are places in South Africa that are doing this. There are places in Southeast Asia that are doing this, but it's not done in a way that is inviting everyone in. Many people that get into these programs have to be privileged. They have to come from families that enable them to enter these programming. So instead of doing it in that sector, in that way, they should be in community areas like Cantamonto Market. There should be an innovation center there for creators that want to learn how to use AI and blockchain in their design processes, so that they can understand early how to integrate it from the supply chain side. So all these things are possible. But there are also global initiatives like Mission Impact Academy. But to even get into any of these programming, you have to know they exist. And so I think the people that know of these types of programs need to also provide educational advocacy and go back and help the communities get involved. One thing that I'm doing with Fusion right now is working with the government in Algeria to lead on integrating Web3 technology, blockchain, and AI into their university curriculum. And I'm working with them to do that as a part of a pilot program. But that's in North Africa, but I am going to continue to try to do it in other places as well, because it's such an important initiative to get women understanding the opportunity that exists in tech. Many of them don't know that it exists. And it's not surprising. Only 70% of CEOs globally are women that work in tech. So I'll send that back to you, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're running out of time. So I'm going to just hand over back to Lisa. But thank you all for your points on one, innovative funding, where people can get different funding opportunities that you've mentioned, the grants, impact investors, crowdfunding, foundations, venture capital. But I think above all that, what you've emphasized is having the passion and having the drive and finding the right people and building women, raising leaders. So that's been a very good learning point. I think on the education aspect, yes, getting more Africans, getting more people from developing countries into the room, and then using technology. So the technology discussion, I think we'll have to call you back so that we get into more details. But I love what you said about education advocacy. Share information about what's available so that people can begin to use technology as well to educate themselves and really get the best back for their investment. Over to you, Lisa, just for you to take us on to the next half or the closing session. Thank you.
Hi. I'm trying to put the spotlight back on me. Maybe you can help to do that. Well, we had just a couple of questions, and thank you all for this round. It's been very interesting. I think
I can't see your video, sorry.
Can you see me?
No, you're not.
Camera.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I think I will ask a couple of questions to the speakers now, just the last round of questions. And we wanted to know, firstly, we talked about global visibility and how this is important. All of you are doing work on your different platforms that raise the profile of women. But it's not, but still, people from underrepresented communities, minorities might not necessarily have access to this platform. So all the speakers on this call today were all in Davos this year. Davos, the World Economic Forum, where all the world's companies and leaders were in the third week of January. This is a very strategic place because you can connect with industry leaders, you can discuss impact funding, you can, if you have a very deliberate plan, you can access key people, billionaires, and companies that are really active in the fields that we know. So all of us on this call were there. And as Phenomenal Women Global, we held, I think you saw on our platform, we held a pre-Davos business brunch in order to capture some of those speakers beforehand and let our community interact with them. These were people in impact investing, venture capitalists, and coaches, and different kinds of groups. But we noticed that in 2014, only 15% of the attendees in Davos were women, for example. And this is a place that draws about 10,000 people in one go. In 2016, it raised to about 18,000. 18%, and in 2020, 24%. So progressively, they have been platforms, they have been engaged. The World Economic Forum has included gender-focused initiatives to get more women on board. There have been more women's organizations as well, creating those spaces. But I would like to just maybe bring the question to Elena, who was also in Davos and who's also been in many different platforms. How can we ensure that women's voices are not only included, but also influential in these spaces, shaping international policies and initiatives, given your experiences in all these different platforms? Elena, are you there?
First of all, I would like to thank you all ladies who spoke today, because I have known so much from different perspectives, and I am empowered by your experience and knowledge. It's so inspiring, because some of you from the region, when you really have seen the girls, the ladies who struggling under pressure of biases, lacking of finance, and lacking of access to the great education. And of course, you're struggling, this lady struggling of getting of access to this such influential platform like World Economic Forum in Davos. Definitely, it's one of the best spot for raising your voice. For me, it was like 8 times when I was in Davos. So, and it was different experience because some years I participate from backed by biggest corporation, and it's one role, and another role when it was the third time for me when I was like a CEO of Rahim Invest, and it's slightly different role. And what I felt when you speak from yourself, you have a lot of people see your authenticity, people feel your sincerity, and it's attract more than just backing the gray but big corporation. People would love to invite you to the platform. I was a speaker in Davos this time. I was a speaker at one of the biggest Web3 platform. This year was dedicated AI and Web3. And I was honored to sign up a memorandum of Davos memorandum, but it's global membership of players in Web3 as well. I participate in podcast from one of the biggest American corporation. So it was different role, but what I mentioned, your authenticity, it's the only way to be interested to other people. They would like to listen to truth from deep from your deep background, and it doesn't matter where you're from. Just try to get this access. Just be in contact with the different platforms. You never know what's opportunities around, what's the agenda, even the big corporation, because it's quite boring. Nobody was at CNBC AI platform in all this church. I just stopped by, have seen there's almost nobody there. It was quite boring because when people speak only about the guiding by script from the big corporation, other people barely can know something new. Follow your dream, follow your truth, be authentic, and dare to knock on the door. It's my advice.
Thank you so much, Elena. So it's really about networking, being visible, being present, contacting even those companies beforehand, because many companies go to Davos, presenting yourself and trying to find that space. There are several women spaces, the World Women's Forum, Equality Lounge, and even UN Women tries to create several events that enable different women to participate. So Davos is open. People can actually just go there. It's quite expensive, yes, but it is an open place. But getting the opportunity to speak is what is hard. I mean, I had an opportunity also to speak at the Africa House because I had a connection with Valerie. And Valerie, who I want to call on to speak if she's there, Valerie opened, I wrote to Africa House and I realized Valerie was also co-organizing an event, and I managed to get on a speaker list. I had an opportunity to speak at the Pakistan Business Summit in Davos because of my connection with Anila, who is from Pakistan and was speaking there. And she pulled me in I had 5 minutes to share how we can collaborate as African women with women in Pakistan in relation to business, for example. So I think it's just leveraging also on the contacts that we have, even contacts in this group, to be able to be more visible, and therefore have access to funding, have access to education resources and other areas like that. But I would like to pull in 2 more people before we close. Valerie, are you there? Can you say something on Davos and visibility? Otherwise, if she's not on, Nadia?
Yes. Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I want to put you on the spotlight. Nadia was not an official speaker, but she does a lot on impact investing and supporting and financing, helping organizations look for financing. So, Nadia, please put your camera on so that I can give you the spotlight.
I'm trying. Thank you, Lisa, but I'm afraid that my computer is kind of in a
Okay,
freeze
we
mode.
got you there. We've got you there. I'm going to add
All
you
right.
to the spotlight. Please go
Thank
ahead. You have 1 minute before we
Okay.
we close.
Yes, at least thank you for the opportunity and for enabling me to connect with the ladies that I've been happy to meet some of them in Davos. And I really look forward to collaborating with all you all ideally, because I think if so many great women come together, I am convinced that we can make a real impact. And I just look forward through Lisa, through the Phenomenal Women Network to reach out to you, because everything is freeze on my side, so I cannot write or do anything. So thank you so much. Congratulations to you all for your great work. And I really look forward to maybe connecting and working and partnering with you. Thank you.
Nadia, please just tell them a bit about your organization.
So we are a federation based in Geneva. What we are trying to do is to support local community projects and to make them become impactful and scalable in all areas, whether water, education, health, construction, anything you name it, can become a potential impactful and scalable project to us. And we accompany any project owners or any business person to get their project up to a stage where they can be submitted for funding. And we try to do this in a way that support community, but also bringing academia on board for the youth to come and to join and support the process, with the ideal also opportunity to do redistribution in communities out of those projects. So we are very much in a bilingual, because Africa being English and French, we try to manage those two languages, because we know that Francophone is very much absent at a certain level and in certain space. So I'm trying to get the Pan-Africanism out through our initiative. Thank you so much, Lisa, again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nadia. So I would now like to thank all the speakers. If you can put your camera on, all of you, and all the participants. We're just going to take a group photo. So just have 1 minute to put your camera on for a few seconds and we take a group photo. But just in summary, I think some of the key points have been taken on board. The importance of investing in education of women, especially in AI. Access to funding can be difficult, but we should be bold and try and network with organizations that have this funding. Don't be shy about, presenting yourself and your ideas. There are so many sources of funding, but you need to have connections and we need to be bold. Visibility is important as well. Accessing platforms, accessing meetings, investing in your own, travel to these platforms as well, and using organizations such as Phenomenal Women Global and all the ladies organizations here. You can read up on their organizations on LinkedIn, to use them as a source of information, a source of tapping into networks. At Phenomenal Women Global, we have an annual conference every year. So these are, things, networks that we use to bring people together. We do this in Geneva, we do this in Uganda. Nadia also has events, Brielle has events. We all do events in our respective capacities. So make use of those platforms to grow your career, to grow your businesses. So I want to just thank you and to end here, but let us take a photo. Let me see how I can change the formatting. And if there are any questions that were not answered, because I see most of them were comments, please just email us or drop them in the box. We shall get the speakers to to answer them and to send more information. So I'm just trying to.
Lisa,
Yes.
can I just take a minute to thank some of the ladies on the forum who
Yes.
joined in? I think some of them have dropped off from the Business Network International. So we had some people from BNI joining as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we just really want to acknowledge all of you, just to thank you. Please put on your camera before the computer crashes for some, where the networks are difficult, but it's important that we take a record of this and just enjoy the moment. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you, Anila. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Ambrielle. Thank you, Elena. Thank you. Who have I left out? I hope I didn't leave anybody out. Okay, I think I have mentioned everyone who spoke, but really, really thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you, Ambrielle.
Thank you for having us, Lisa. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you so sorry. Thank you so much, Diana and Lisa.
Okay, happy
Thank
Women's
you.
Month. Happy Women's Day for tomorrow.
Happy Women's Day, everyone.
Enjoy.
Happy Wednesday, ladies.
Here.